Oh, Merry Beefmas, everybody. Merry Beefmas. And I'll be ranking the commentators for you guys today. But before I get started, I would like to ask you guys a question, right? Because there has been some interesting drama that has gone on with musical MMA, right? Posting that expose of a certain other MMA YouTuber, right? A couple of MMA YouTubers, as a matter of fact. But I'd like to know your thoughts. If you were interested personally in my coverage of that particular topic, because I am passionate about it, right? When it comes to the exploitation of young people, then yeah, I'm quite passionate about that kind of stuff, and I find it to be disgusting. But at the end of the day, I don't want to cover anything that you guys don't really care for. But if you're interested in my particular opinion on that situation, then I would encourage you to let me know in the comments, because if so, then I would love to cover it myself. But let's just get into this topic. All right, I've been wanting to do this for a little while. I figured, why not today? Why not on a Thursday? I feel like Thursday is the perfect day to talk about commentators. For what reason? I have no idea. But I'm just going to rank them accordingly. And this is all recent or current active commentators. So let's just get into it. The first one up, we have Dominick Cruz. Now, I think he's a very good analytical mind. So I think he does serve his role pretty well as a commentator, right? He's good at foreseeing certain events taking place before they take place, right? He is a great mind as a fighter, considering he was at one point one of the best fighters in the world and long reigning bantamweight champion. So you'd expect him to have that under his belt, which he does, and he displays it quite often. But the issue I have with Dominick Cruz sometimes, and it's the same issue I have with any ex-fighter, maybe with the exception of Paul Felder, but any ex-fighter who is now a commentator, these guys seem to have their heads stuck up their own asses sometimes, sniffing their own farts, because they start shitting on the fighters that they're commentating over and saying, no, hey, yeah, you're fucking doing that wrong. If you just did it like this, then maybe you could do this in reverse position. You know what I mean? It becomes a weird circle jerk, and I don't like it, and I feel like Dominick Cruz does fall too much into that at times. So for that reason, I can only rank him at B tier. You know what I mean? Like the annoying side of him and the brilliant analytical side of him, they do play as counterbalances to one another. So I would say right at about B tier is where Dominick Cruz belongs for me personally. Let me get into Paul Felder. I'm just gonna stick him right at the top. I think he's the best current active commentator in the UFC. He's analytical, right? He can talk about the techniques specifically, right, as an ex-fighter, and he doesn't fall into the weird DC, Joe Rogan, Michael Bisping of trashing fighters. He just kind of says it how it is, and he does explain things quite well in a very digestible way. And I feel like casuals and hardcores alike can both get behind Paul Felder's commentary. Like, I see nothing really wrong with it at all. Maybe I haven't been paying enough attention to Paul Felder's commentary, but as far as I'm concerned, this dude should be on all the major pay-per-views because I think he's the best. I think he's the best as things stand. There's no doubt in my mind that maybe one day, once Paul Felder is maybe a more established commentator, maybe he will start going off the deep end a little bit, like the Dominick Cruzes and all that. But I also just think it's because Paul Felder was never a champion, and considering DC, Dominick Cruz, and like in Bisping were all champions, they just have these inflated egos, and they just go too far in the direction of masturbatory commentary, self masturbatory commentary. It's strange to me. Paul Felder does not fall into that category, so S tier, absolutely. Michael Bisping, I think he's okay, but like I said, he does get a little bit annoying. Right, he does trash the fighters a little bit too much. You were a champion, Bisping, but like, come on. At the same time, Michael Bisping is the only champion that I can say was also somehow a journeyman at the same time. Makes no sense, but it applies to Bisping in my opinion. But at the same time, I do feel like, is he as good as Dominick Cruz? Yeah, I would say, considering they have this feud with each other as well, it's just kind of poetic to rank them with one another. Like, Michael Bisping's voice can also just be pretty annoying. Yeah, you know what, man? Michael Bisping, B tier, even though he is good at the same time. I'm thinking, A tier is B tier unfair. Nah, B tier as things stand right now. Then we get to Jon Anik. Now, Jon Anik is pretty much like the new Mike Goldberg, maybe the new Mike Goldberg, except with a little bit more knowledge, because Mike Goldberg was like, he was a dumbass. Like, when it came to MMA knowledge, the dude was so ignorant. He literally was on the commentary team because he had a commentator's voice. And then you had Joe Rogan actually spitting facts and displaying knowledge of the sport back in the day, that was. But Jon Anik, I think he's he's almost the best, but I do think that he suffers sometimes because he has his great moments, right, where he calls out the Leon head kick almost right before it happens. Like, he doesn't call it out, but that is not the cloth from which he is cut. You know what I mean? Then the head kick lands, and it's a beautiful, fantastic moment. And Jon Anik in that moment is an S tier commentator. But I would say the rest of the instances that I can think of, it's just Jon Anik saying weird things. Like, his reaction to knockouts are great, right? His one-liners are great, but he doesn't actually say much, in my opinion. He doesn't really say much. Doesn't have a lot to say about MMA, specifically about certain techniques, right? That's where the professional fighters more come in to play. But with Jon Anik, it's just kind of rattling off random facts like this one.
Out there. Both of these fighters have dealt with custody battles involving their children. Andre Ewell's son Eli is 7, and as of this broadcast, does not have rights to see him, does not know where his son is. Thankfully for Andre, though, there's a happy ending here a little bit. He's got a 10-month-old son, June, I should say, that is now his pride and joy. But Gutierrez also dealing with a custody battle in his own right.
Personal favorite of mine. I love that moment. It's one of my favorite commentary moments of all time, but can we all just come to an agreement that is absolutely retarded to bring up? Like, what are you doing, Jon Anik? But A tier for Anik, I would say. As far as the voice goes, he has the best commentary voice that I've ever heard in the UFC. His voice is perfect. His voice is absolutely perfect for commentary. Laura Sanko, Stank-Ho, as some people would call her. It's a tough one. It actually is a tough one because I feel like she's done pretty well recently. Like, I know a lot of people didn't want to hear Laura Sanko commentate, and is it DEI? Maybe, but she's also an ex-fighter. So in that regard, maybe she does actually deserve to be commentating. So she falls into the same category of ex-fighters. She has the experience. She does call out certain techniques, I would say, pretty well. She does very well, I would say, as far as commentary. But then I think back, not too far away, actually, Peter Yan versus Deiveson Figueiredo. In the 5th round, Deiveson Figueiredo landed one punch that had no effect on Peter Yan, and then Laura Sanko says, this fight could be anyone's right now, which is just ridiculous considering that Peter Yan was sweeping the fight up to that point. So that's the issue, is like moments like that where she just gets too excited and then says something completely incorrect. You know what I mean? And then corrected herself afterwards. I think she clarified to say, oh no, like in terms of a knockout, like anyone can knock each other out right now. But no. You got overly excited and you stated something completely retarded that made no sense. But I would say for the most part, Laura Sanko, she doesn't engage in the masturbatory commentary where she's shitting on fighters to make herself feel better. You know what I mean? Like Dominick, Cruz, and Bisping do, even though she's a professional fighter or an ex-professional fighter. So I'll give her respect for that. And even, a B tier for her, I suppose, is fine. It's fine. Like, I'm not the biggest fan of Laura Sanko in general, but as a commentator, I can't sit here and say that she's done an awful job, because she hasn't. She hasn't done that bad. Joe Rogan, I'm sticking you right at the bottom, buddy. In fact, this position is for you and you specifically. What are you doing still employed by the UFC, dude? It makes no sense. This dude shows up to every single card. He looks baked out of his mind. He looks baked leading up to every single fight card. All Joe Rogan is good for now is making a funny face and reaching and grabbing people's shoulders when a crazy knockout happens. That is all Joe Rogan is good for. Every single time the fight gets to the ground, all we get is Joe Rogan just absolutely fucking circle jerking, man. Just circle jerking with whoever will engage with him about the high level jiu-jitsu. Every single time any fighter is on top or in the guard of a prolific jiu-jitsu fighter, he's just constantly talking about how much danger the top position fighter is in. He's in so much danger. Oh man, great 50 shots he just landed, but he's got to really watch out for that triangle. He's got a nasty triangle. Joe Rogan, shut the fuck up about jiu-jitsu. You're a nerd. Don't want to hear it anymore. And I'm just sick and tired. Like, is anybody not sick and tired of Joe Rogan's commentary? It's brain dead. It's ridiculous. The dude is fried, and I have no enjoyment listening to Joe Rogan commentate on fights anymore. That's it. I don't understand it. I mean, he doesn't get paid, so at least I can't say, like, I think he's not getting paid, and if he's not getting paid, then at least he's not stealing a paycheck. But man, this dude has nothing interesting to say in fights anymore. Just brain dead nonsense. Just, fucking creasing in his seat, waiting for the fight to get to the ground so he can start talking about how dangerous the bottom guy is. That's all we get from Joe Rogan. Get out of here, man. How are you still employed? I have no idea. Brendan Fitzgerald, I'll stick him in C tier. He's not offensive as far as how bad he is as a commentator. He has the good commentary voice. I think he's actually closer to Mike Goldberg than Jon Anik, actually. But he has no real knowledge of the sport. He's on there just like Jon Anik because of the commentary voice, but Jon Anik is capable of giving us iconic moments, while Brendan Fitzgerald, he's just so generic. But he's a likable dude. He's inoffensive. He's just there. Brendan Fitzgerald, I think C tier is perfect for him. I think he perfectly is a C tier commentator, perfect for him. Daniel DC Cormier, I would say when he's on a commentary team with maybe a Jon Anik and a Paul Felder, I think DC could be a really, really great commentator. But then when he's there with Joe Rogan, he seems to get pulled into the weird narratives that Joe Rogan starts going on and on about and just yapping about. But for the most part, DC does have great things to say. He seems to be pretty impartial, although just like Joe Rogan, when it comes to just being a nerd about jiu-jitsu, I feel like Daniel Cormier has something similar when it comes to wrestling. Just loves it, man. He creams his fucking pants as soon as any sort of grappling exchange or scramble is occurring. This dude is just lighting up. You can hear it in his voice, dude. And he just wants to share his knowledge, which is fair enough if you have knowledge to share, which he does, of course, being Daniel Cormier. But you know what? Am I going to put him in A tier? Nah, C tier. I think B tier, man. And I'm going to move Laura Sanko down to C tier, but just because that Peter Yan comment, man. You offended me with that one. You offended me. I'm offended. That's it. I'm offended. You've offended me. So, Laura Sanko, you must now suffer the consequences for slandering Peter Yan. It's as simple as that, right? And then last but not least, or maybe it is least, John Gooden, probably the most forgettable of all the commentators. Yet another commentator who has a great commentary voice. British, I believe he is. He sounds a lot like Dan Hardy. So I think he was just a like-for-like replacement. Is he as good as Dan Hardy was? Absolutely not. He's similar to a Brendan Fitzgerald or a Jon Anik, to where it's just the commentary voice. It's all they offer. But I think he's a likable dude, just like Brendan Fitzgerald. So for that reason, we'll just stick him in C tier. He doesn't have a lot to say, a lot of interesting shit to say, insightful shit to say during the fights. Although he's inoffensive, just like Laura Sanko, just like Brendan Fitzgerald. You feel me? So that is my tier list of current UFC commentators. Let me know in the comment section below who your favorite is, who your least favorite is, what you think about my placement of each. Anyway, guys, I appreciate you watching. I'll see you on the next one.